Hello everybody and welcome to my July live stream. I didn't get one done in June and almost didn't get one done in July. Just busy doing stuff, taking care of family things, and next thing I knew it was almost August. So today we're going to talk about Salado Polychrome. So Salado Polychrome is a type of pottery that was made in the ancient Southwest, and we're going to look at some examples. I'm going to show you pictures, but we're also going to talk about how it was made. We're going to talk a little bit about a history of it, but we're not going to go too deep on the history. I'm going to try to keep it more focused on the technology, how it was made, and how we can reproduce it today. Now, that is not the only thing we will be talking about. If you have any pottery-related questions, feel free to ask them. Put them in the chat, and I will try to answer all of those before we're done here. Okay? I have a few announcements. I want to make sure I say hi to everybody. Let me get to those right now. Southwest Kiln Conference is going to be September 27th to the 29th, and that's going to be in Cortez, Colorado. So if you're interested in replica pottery or primitive pottery or any of these subjects, that's a great place to go and learn. There's going to be a lot of potters there, a lot of really excellent potters who you can meet and talk to or watch fire or, see demonstrations. Great place to learn. The information is all on the website. It's swkiln.com, swkiln.com. For the Southwest Kiln Conference. And I think you should, if you are interested, it's not too far for you, think about trying to attend. I will be there, so it'll be a good place, if you want to meet me, it's a good place to do that. Pottery firing here in Tucson, August 3rd, that's next Saturday, it's a week from yesterday. If you're in the Tucson area or Phoenix or any place, we are going to be doing a pottery firing here in Tucson, 8 o'clock in the morning, nice and early because it's before, not only before it gets breezy, but before it gets too hot. So if you're interested in that, contact me on my website. There's a contact form. Let me see. The web address is here on the screen. ancientpottery.how is my website. If you are interested in coming, if you are local and you're interested in coming to that firing next Saturday, go to the contact form, send me an email, and I can send you the address and any other relevant details, okay? So that is next Saturday. Gourd scrapers. Gourd scrapers have been out of stock on my website for months, and they are about to come back, probably middle of next week. So if you've been waiting to order a gourd scraper, give it a couple days and they'll probably be there. So the other thing that I'm going to have available on my website that I haven't ever had before is pookies. I am going to have some pookies available for sale probably within the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not sure the exact date on that. The gourd scrapers are going to be in a couple days. The pookies are a little farther out, but not long. Again, that's ancientpottery.how. And then the last news item I have is the Ancient Potters Club. The Ancient Potters Club is my Zoom pottery class. We meet every Wednesday night on Zoom. We make pottery together. Every month we do a different project. And so August project is going to be a Tonto Polychrome jar. Tonto is a type of Salado Polychrome. And so this live stream ties neatly into that project because this is the type of pottery we're going to be making next month. So if you're an Ancient Potters Club member, this would be a good live stream for you to watch to get an idea about Salado Polychrome, the history, how it's made before we get into that. But also if you watch the live stream and you enjoy that, you might think about joining the Ancient Potters Club because we're going to be working on that here in the next few days. We still got one more class for our July. Wednesday is still July, and we're working on the Mesa Verde Kiva jars. So we'll get those finished up on this Wednesday, and then we'll start the following Wednesday on the Tonto Polychrome. All right. My audio okay, everybody? I'm going to say hi to some people. Stephen Walford, all the way from France, is here. Good to see you, Steve. Adrian the Crafter, hello. Love your channel. When is the next in-person class? So Live Fit SD, maybe, wants to know when the next in-person class is. Last year, I think I did like 4 workshops. It gets really hard to do workshops because I'm also trying to keep a regular schedule for videos on YouTube. I'm also I teach this Wednesday night class. I do a lot of other things like that, answer questions and stuff. So when I teach an in-person workshop, it's usually 5 days. It takes more than a week of my time because I spend several days preparing for it, going out to the location, getting set up, all these things. And so it really cramps my video schedule and all the other things that I do. And so this year I cut back. I'm doing 2 workshops. I did one in the spring, and then I'll do one in the fall. And so the next one is in October. It's been full for months. And then I will after the October workshop at some point, shortly afterward, I will schedule my spring 2025 workshop, which will probably be like March. And if you want to if you are interested in, in getting into that workshop, the class level is set at 12. So it can fill up pretty quick. If you get on my newsletter, I have an email newsletter. Again, go to my website, and there you can sign up for my email newsletter, and you will be the first to know when that class comes. So what I tell people a lot of times, because there's a lot of people that want in-person workshops, and like I said, there's just one of me. I'm trying to do a video every week or two, and all these other things. It gets very hard. So if you're interested in learning what I'm teaching, the Ancient Potters Club is probably your best bet. For one thing, you don't have to travel to Arizona. We get together every Wednesday night on Zoom, just like this, and except like this, you can hear me, but I can't hear you. But on Zoom, we talk back and forth, we share information, people ask questions. It's a lot more informal, and it's a great way to learn. And you get access to all 4 of my master classes: the oil clay, outdoor pottery firing, coil pottery, and natural paint slips and pigments. So it's a good way to learn, and it's, not that you can't come to my in-person class, it's just a little more difficult to get into an in-person class, okay? Sorry if I went on too long there. Adrian the Crafter, finished building, slipping, and painting my Chaco Canyon Polychrome. Just need to let it dry and fire it. Okay, I look forward to seeing that, Adrian. I hope you post it somewhere where I can see it. Chris in Kansas. Hey, Chris. Glad to see you here. James Cecil. Hey, I'm glad to see you here, James. I'd like to hear more about your trip at some point. So if you could get on the Discord group, maybe, and post, because I'd like to know what you did. So Jim came down to Arizona. He lives in Oklahoma. He came to Arizona last week. We went to the Arizona State Museum together, saw the pots, we had lunch, and then he went about his trip. So I want to know if he was going to collect clay and stuff. So that's why I said that. Jim is a member of the Ancient Potters Club, so he came down, and we went out and looked at the museum, because the museum's fixing to close. The Arizona State Museum is going to close. If you are in the Tucson area or Arizona, Arizona State Museum is going to close on August 1st for 3 years. So if you haven't seen the pottery there, it's a magnificent collection. You should get in there and see it before it closes, because who knows when it's going to be open again, and when it reopens, who knows if it's going to have as much stuff on display. Eduardo, the blue stones found in Arizona is lapis lazuli. No, we don't have lapis lazuli here. Turquoise is what we have, or different kinds of copper carbonate. Azurite, malachite, chrysocolla, lots of copper, but we don't have lapis here. Live Fit SD, Ancient Potters Club in would like to sign up, please. Okay, is it Live Fit? It looks like SD, but it might be 5D. I don't know. Again, the Ancient Potters Club, if you're interested, is on my website. Just go to ancientpottery.how, and you can go to the store, go to shop, and you can buy it there. You can pay by the year, or you can pay by the month. Okay, La Family Manga. Hello, Andy. I'm new to your channel. Hey, La Family Manga. It's good to have you here. How to join membership? Again, that's the same question. Sorry. Glass Gavlin. Hi, Andy. Hey. Good to see everybody here. Let me try to skip down to some questions now. I could say hi to everybody all day. Love your videos and info. Greetings from South Africa. Good to have you here from South Africa. Ghosty Ocean. Good afternoon. Glad to make the stream. I'm glad you're here. I'm new to your podcast. I'm starting to make some paper clay. Did they use anything like this in the ancient pottery? Yeah. Now, I can't speak to ancient pottery other parts of the world, but here in the Southwest, not so much. Some of the, in historic times, they did use like manure for temper. And so that was kind of fibery. So that might be similar, but I just don't know. Hi, Andy. I'm new. Oh, I read that. Adrian the Crafter. In some parts of South Africa, people fire with dry grass bundles, and it gets quite hot. Yeah, I've seen that. There's some great videos on YouTube of people firing pottery with grass bundles. I've tried it and never got it to work. So there's obviously a trick to it. Did you see my question? Timmy, yeah, Timmy, I did see that early on. So Timmy said that some of his pottery, every time it dries, it cracks. If your pottery is cracking when it dries, you need to, well, look, every clay is different, first of all. And I say this every live stream, but it's true. Every clay is different. Your clay is not the same as my clay, is not the same as everybody else here's clay. If you're getting wild clay, that is. So Be aware that every clay has unique properties. Generally, as clay dries, it shrinks. If your clay continues to crack when it dries, then you might need to add more temper. Adding more temper, that is non-plastic material. It could be sand, it could be ground up rock, it could be ground up shells, it could be, like I said, fiber, it could be things like manure. I just made some clay. This video is coming out next week where I made clay with sawdust temper. So look for that. Anything non-plastic is going to work as temper, and that's going to keep it from cracking. So if it continues to crack, try increasing the amount of temper in your clay. The other thing you can do is be careful how it dries. Let it dry real slow. Take those pots, turn them upside down so their rims aren't exposed to the air. And maybe put them in a cupboard. Cover them up with a piece of cloth or something. Let them dry slower, and you can prevent some of that crackage. Ghosty Ocean, how often do you make up your own designs or put on your pottery? A lot of designs on ancient pottery are wonderfully detailed. Yeah, most of what I do personally is replica work. So it's either an exact replica of an ancient pot, or it's a type replica. Like, I'm making this Mesa Verde Kiva jar in the Ancient Potters Club. I might not be making it exactly like an ancient pot, but I want it to, when it's done, look like a Mesa Verde Kiva jar. So not very often am I doing, unique work where I'm like making up my own design. Usually I'm copying a design off another pot. Okay, skipping down. It looks like it's it for the questions for now. Go ahead, if you have other questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat, and I will move on to the information about Salado Polychrome. Oh, here we go. All right, so Salado, it's a weird thing. They used to actually call it a culture, not a culture. Archaeologists don't consider. I should say first of all, archaeologists don't consider it a culture. They call it a cultural phenomenon. So they say it overlaps other cultures, like people that were living in the Hohokam culture. They continue to be Hohokam people, but they take some of the trappings of this Salado cultural phenomenon. They start using or making their pottery, or these kind of things. So meanwhile, people that are Mogollon might also start using and making Salado pottery and doing some other things different that are similar to this culture, to this Salado thing, but aren't actually a culture. So I know it's confusing. And this happened 1275 to 1400 in the Southwest. And so this is the area, if you look at where it says Salado, that's the specific area where Salado Polychrome was being made. So over a pretty large area of the Southwest. And that's what we're going to be focusing on. But I also wanted to highlight this upper Little Colorado area because it's important in the history of Salado. And we'll come back to the map later, but keep in mind that when I talk about the upper Little Colorado area, it's just north, but kind of slightly overlapping the Salado area, and it's important. Okay, so so up in this Little Colorado area, I should have looked up the date. I think it was like 1100s. They started making this redware. It's called Sholo Black on Red, and so it's organic paint on a red clay slip. So it's got some kind of a special clay that holds organic paint. Not all clays do this. Most clays don't, in fact. And they're making black designs with organic paint made from plants. We'll get into that more in a little bit. And so this starts, let's say 1100. People are making this stuff, and a lot of people make it over a broad area. It's kind of sloppy. It's never super popular. It's not like something that gets traded a lot. All right. And then about 1275, 1280, people in that, right on that edge of that Little Colorado area, kind of down on the Mogollon Rim, they change the designs, okay? They start using like a Tularosa style design. Not Tularosa, well, some Tularosa, but it's, what do they call this? Like they get some influence from Cayenta. They're using these Tularosa swirls. There's a name for the Pinedale style. So it's a new design style. And they call this Pinto Black on Red. So it's, as you see, we go back, it's very similar, right? It's organic paint on a red slip. It's real pretty, but it's still a bichrome, black on red, two colors, right? And then somebody got a wild idea and they said, let's put it on a white slip. And that's the beginning of Salado Polychrome, because once you have three colors, red, black, white. Now you've got polychrome. You've got 3 colors. So this is the same, okay? Pinto black on red, same technology. Sholo black on red, same technology, right? Some kind of a special clay slip. A slip is just a thin layer of clay that's painted on the pot that holds organic paint. And then this plant material painted on the pot to make organic paint. And then, you've got the black organic design. So same technology. The only difference was we had that Pinedale style design shift. So from Sholo black on red to Pinto black on red was just a design style shift, right? And then we had a new color come in. They found a clay slip, some kind of slip that they could use that fired white instead of red. Salado Polychrome was born. That's the beginnings of it. And so it's interesting that Pinto Polychrome, that was that first Salado type that I looked at. It's made, you can see this is Archaeology Southwest made this map, and I think it's real good because it illustrates real well the weirdness of this. So Salado, most of these Salado polychromes are made in the red area here, right, over the course of 150 years or something. But Pinto, when Pinto only lasted for, what is it, like 25, Pinto Poly 1280 to 1330, so I don't know, like 50 years, right? And it's kind of a little off, right? It only overlaps a little, and then it's kind of in a little different area. And then when Salado just takes off, it just explodes across the southern Southwest. People are making it and using it everywhere. It's in a slightly different area. It's kind of weird. So I don't know what it means. So this is Pinto. Pinto has the designs that go all the way to the rim. Lots of cross hatching, which later Salado styles don't have a lot of cross hatching. Really great, lots of great examples. Got that swirl they use a lot. Some of those are Kayenta inspired designs. So the Kayenta were way up in northern Arizona, and they were migrating down. And some of those Kayenta designs got incorporated into this Pinedale style that showed up right then. Here's another one. It's kind of a dark one, but that's another really great example of Pinto Polychrome. Until 1300, 1310, 1320, early 1300s, this new style called Gila Polychrome, that's slightly different, right? It just explodes across that area, that red area. So if I go back up to the map, for example, you can see that like Pinto started up, on that kind of where those two circles overlap. And then Gila takes off in that southern area where it says Salado and spreads across everything. And for hundreds of years, or 150 years, let's say, not hundreds of years, it's the decorated pottery du jour. Everybody's making it and using it, and it gets traded all over too. There's certain villages that are making it, and then there's other villages, they don't make it, they just consume it in vast quantities. So look at a few really great examples. This one's from the Safford area. This is in the collection up at University of Colorado. And there's one. This one's from Beshbagawa, which is a public museum in Globe, Arizona. Nice little Gila Polychrome bowl. And this one is at Eastern Arizona College in Safford, part of the Mills collection. Really great. And this one is at Cochise College in Sierra Vista, Arizona. You can see the mend holes in it. See, they drill holes, and they had a crack on the rim. They drilled holes and they bound it together with some leather or sinew or something. So let's see. Oh, and then this one is also from Cochise College. All right, let's go back and answer the questions in the chat, and then I'll come back to the lecture. See where I left off here. Hello from South Dakota. Hi, Domino Thunder. Good to see you. What about if you only get 1 or 2 hairline cracks only after it is fired? So Timmy, you're getting those cracks after it's fired. I still think there's more temper might be a solution. If there's some reason you can't add more temper, right? Like if you're using 20% temper, can you bump that up to 25% and see how it does? Can you bump that up to 30% and see how it does? I mean, perhaps if you're at like 40% temper and you're starting to lose plasticity, then I could see you saying, look, I can't add more temper. But it's an easy answer. The other thing you can do, if you think they might be thermal shock, you can use cover sherds. When you're firing, put more broken bits of sherds or piece of tin can or something over the pot to keep the fuel away from it. because what happens is when you start that fire, you've got a lot of radiant heat hitting the pot, and that'll jump that temperature up really high, real fast. And so the cover sherds will block that, and it'll help the temperature of the pot rise more slowly if you think it might be thermal shock. That's the answer. Chris in Kansas, welcome to Plainware Pottery, joined channel member. Thank you, Chris. Adrian the Crafter, sometimes my clay has small, tiny crackles in certain places. Is it a problem, or should I see? And should I see to it? I have an idea. It might be silt. I don't think silt would cause little crackles. Sounds like maybe your clay has a lot of shrinkage. I don't know. It's probably something unique to the clay you're using. You know, you could try mixing other clays. You could try adding, more temper. Again, I mean, that's a good overall answer to a lot of crack problems. Jerry Stewart is here from Florida. Good to see you here, Jerry. Timmy, it may need more temper. It might not be able to handle the thermal shock. Well, I already said that. Lenite Dave, you might want to try preheating your pot gradually before the main firing. Oh, that's a good point, Dave. When you stone smooth, are you left with low spots that don't get polished and have a dull appearance? Oh yeah, absolutely. Where's my pot? I have a pot here that I'm working. Oh, it's over on a shelf. I can't get it. I was just polishing a pot yesterday. I was going to show you. Absolutely. When you're polishing a pot, and it's, you polish it when it's still a little damp, leather hard, right? You'll always have like low spots that don't get polished, little dents. Now, you can work, as you become a better potter, you can work towards like eliminating low spots, scraping it really good before you slip it, right? Scrape it real good to get it as even as possible, and then put a layer of slip on before you polish. If you're just polishing the base clay you formed from, even if you just want it to be that base clay, put a slip of that base clay on it, and that'll kind of fill in some of those low areas, and then polish, and that might help. So there's little tricks you can do, but you often see that. You see that kind of, places that are polished and they have a different color, places that aren't polished, they're a little different color. Do your best to polish everything. You're going to have some of that. But after the firing, you notice those less. Like before firing, it can look very mottled. The different colors, areas that are polished, areas that aren't. Once you pull it out of the fire, they're very hard to see those spots. But you see the same thing on the ancient pots. So, they had the same problems we have. So, not necessarily a bad thing. It's just one of those things, Hello? What's the experience with temper? What's the best temper to work with? I like sand, but ground pottery sherds work really good. They're just a little more effort to make. So you just take pottery sherds, old pots. Sometimes you can just take clay and like make a little wad of clay and throw it in your firing. So it's just fired ceramic, and then take it out and grind it up. So that's, that works real good. Volcanic ash is good because, it's really, really fine. Same with like diatomaceous earth, super fine material. It's not going to do anything weird in the firing. Like some stones they want to expand or turn into something else in the fire and go through a chemical reaction. Whereas like diatomaceous earth and volcanic ash are completely inert in the fire, so they're good ones to use. How do you know that white clay will fire white? You don't. You have to test it. You find clay, you make a little tile or a little bowl or something, and you fire it, and then you'll know what color it fires, because you can never guess what color a clay is going to fire before you fire it. Justice, have you ever made a large planting container, 2x2 or 3x4 or bigger? No, I've never made anything that big. That'd be very difficult. Do you know what the chemistry behind the organic paints are? I live in Denmark, so the bee plant is not a native. I would like to look for similar chemical properties. What temperatures? Yeah, so basically there's not a lot of, I don't think, chemistry behind organic paints. Basically, it's turning into carbon, and then, it's burning and turning into carbon, and that carbon is impregnated into that slip. So those smectite slips are highly absorptive. When you paint them on there, they kind of get sucked into the clay slip a little bit. And then in the firing, it burns off all the material on the outside, but leaves some of that carbon, kind of captured in the slip. And so that's why you get the black designs. Experiments I've done and others have done show that almost any plant will do. Almost anything. You just boil it down to a gooky tar and then paint it on. It's not, the secret isn't the organic paint. Almost anything works. The secret is that smectite slip. That's, if you take, let's say I sent you some bee plant paint, really good bee plant paint to Denmark. you paint it on just your regular clay, it's going to burn out. You have to have just the right clay that it's applied to, but the paint itself is not the trick. Okay, I'll go back to my slideshow. Find where I'm at here. Here it is. Okay, so I started trying to reproduce Salado Polychrome way back in, the 90s, early 90s. And I soon found what I was just telling you, that clay slip, the part that's white that gets the black application. That's the hard part. And I went all over southern Arizona looking for clays that would do that and finding nothing. So this is an example. This one turned kind of brown, kind of tan color in the firing. So again, it was a failure, but I was excited. This was my first real success in that brown clay held organic paint. This made a design, whereas usually in the fire, the paint just burns out and you're left with nothing, or a very, very subtle, like gray image. This was the first one I had that actually made designs that you could see after the fire. Here's some more different materials that I was experimenting with, and different levels of success. Looking for, again, that white slip. All over, like if we go back to the map, right? So all over that area where it says Salado, I drove all over the place, and that's a big area in case you're not familiar with Arizona. That's hundreds of square miles, thousands of square miles. Looking for white clay, something that would fire white and would turn organic paint black, and not doing too well. And so finally, I've gone through a lot of stuff, and as you can see here, I've either got stuff where it mostly burns out, like this one on the left, or it holds it, like the one on the right here, but it doesn't really fire white. It's kind of tan. It didn't hold it that well, but I've got a lot of places that are kind of semi successful, And I was about to give up. I said, look, I've been everywhere. I don't know where else to look. I would look at Google Earth, and I would look for white places where it looked white, and I'd zoom in as close as I could, and I'd try to determine if it looked like clay, because you can tell by the way it's eroding whether it's clay or stone, And then I would, on the weekend, I'd drive out there and I'd hike up to wherever this was to see if it was clay, and it was, 9 times out of 10 it was some kind of rock, or maybe it was caliche, or some kind of calcium. Wasn't clay at all. Or sometimes it was clay and it didn't fire white, didn't hold organic paint. So I was about to give up. I didn't know what to do. And then I thought, well, I'm going to look at, the history of Salado Polychromes. Like, where did they come from? Where did this technology develop? And that's when I went back and found out about Sholo black on red, and how it had originated, and Pinto black on red, and Pinto Polychrome, how it had originated up on the Colorado Plateau, north of this Salado area, and then had spread south. And so I thought, well, maybe I should go look up there. Maybe the clay I'm looking for is up there. And so I made a couple of trips, and I found there's white clay all over up there. This is up in that area up near St. John's, Arizona, up not far from Petrified Forest National Park. There's white clay all over up there, and some of it fires brown, just like I showed you. Some of it fires white, though, and lots of it holds organic paint. It's just a different geologic setting and completely different, types of clay. It was amazing. So this is a little test pookie. A lot of times when I'm making a test pot, instead of just making something I'm going to throw away, I make a pookie, because then when I'm done, I have something I can use. This is a little test pookie, and these are different. These are all from up there near, up on the Colorado Plateau, up where Pinto Polychrome was first originated from. And so here I have painted organic paint on all these different slips to see how they would do. And here you go. Look at that. Boom. I had success right away. 1, 2, 3, and 6 all turned black. Really nice. 4 and 5, if you need a reminder, 4 was yellow, 5 was red. They didn't hold organic paint at all. You can see how on 5 it's completely burned out, and 4 it's just kind of real subtle gray. So you can see how it burns out real easy on not the right material. So I started going up there to collect this stuff. Here's some of that white. This is some of the really good white, holds organic paint, turns white. up in those Badlands, up on the Colorado Plateau. Really great stuff. So that's how I figured that out. But that's just one part of the equation. So let's look at a few more examples. This is Tonto Polychrome from, this is at the Tonto National Monument in central Arizona. It's a cliff dwelling you can visit. This is at Beshbagawa. This is, I don't know, I was wondered if that was like a fish or a bird. But you don't see animal drawn in Salado Polychrome very often, so it is unusual. Neat little bowl. This is one from Eastern Arizona College over in Thatcher, Arizona. Really nice jar. And I've got a close-up. If you look, you've got these big swirly, like hand motifs here. And then in between, you've got these little tiles, these little square tiles of designs. And I've got a close-up of that because there's something important in one of those that I'll show you later on. This is one of the bowls at Beshbagawa in Globe, Arizona. These are all Salado Polychromes. They're all painted with organic paint, just like I said. And they're all made down in the southern Southwest, down in that Salado area I showed on the map. So now that we've talked about the slip, we can talk about the paint a little bit. Let me go back to the chat, catch up on questions, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about the paint. Okay, if I can figure out where I was at last. Yeah, I read that one. All right, it seems relatively simple. I do some tests, thank you. All boiled down. Sunflowers are great to use. Yeah, so Steven says sunflowers are good. Sunflowers are something I've used in the past. Boil them down, turn them into paint. I'll talk about making paint in just a second here. Wish I could stay and watch live. Have to watch later. Hey, Jeff, good to see you. Jeff Cooper is a potter over in Deming, New Mexico that I know. Ghosty Ocean. I fire using charcoal. In a paint can with holes punched at the bottom, the iron was able to reduce and turn black. How might you smother that setup to keep it from iron reducing? Yeah, I don't... The iron was able to reduce and turn black. How might you smother that setup to keep from iron reducing? Perhaps a larger... Yeah, I don't know, Ghosty Ocean. It's a good question. He's trying to reduce iron paint in a can, like in his yard with a charcoal fire. And I just don't know if it's possible. I mean, it's an interesting subject for, experiments. I just don't know if it's possible. I've never done any experiments with it. I've thought about it, but I can't give you any suggestions because I don't know. I've never done it. So, how can you tell the difference between Gila, Salado, and Tonto Polychrome? They all look very similar. Yeah, so Risky RD wants to know the difference between these different Salado types. And archaeologists get really crazy with making different types, and it can be very confusing. So the differences are real subtle. Oh, let me cover that. The ones you asked were Gila. So Salado is the broad category. That's all of them. They're all Salado. And then Gila, Tonto are types within that. There's actually more types than that. There's Pinto and Gila and Tonto and what else am I missing? There's Phoenix Polychrome, and there's Dinwiddie Polychrome, and there's another one. Phoenix and Dinwiddie and 9 Mile Polychrome, and there's White River Polychrome. I think that's all of them. Anyway, Gila has a banding line that separates the design field. So there'll be a thick banding line. Pinto goes all the way to the rim. Gila has that banding line before the design starts. Tonto has red in the design. So there'll be white and black areas, and there'll be red, in it, like lines of red or something. So that's the difference. Where Gila just has a solid area for white and black, Tonto has red inside of it. Looking for more questions. Wes sent me some garbage dump smectite to me in France. Just can't get that white. Anyway, a bit gray. Any ideas? Yeah, you've got to keep and I'll talk about firing towards the end of this live stream, but the secret is you're over firing, you're over oxidizing it. So when you're firing, you've got a narrow window between, having it gray and having carbon all over that white, or having whites and blacks before you start burning out the organic paint. So you've got a narrow window of temperature and duration. So you want it to be real short, 15 minutes probably, maybe even a little less. And you want it to be like over 750, but like under 800, or maybe not even 750, maybe like 720, just hot enough to mature that white clay. So it is ceramic and not still clay. But not too much. You're burning out that carbon, basically. It's tough. It's not easy. Andy, I bought a 40-acre ranch in Snowflake, Arizona, and I have found some enormous amounts of this black on white pottery, as well as the lizard skin texture. We're very close to a petrified forest. Well, Jennifer, that is wonderful. There's a lot of nice there's a lot of ruins up there. There's a lot of really great clay and stuff. It's a wonderful area. I'd love to live on 40 acres near Snowflake, Arizona. So I'd trade you your 40 acres in Snowflake for my house in Tucson anytime. I'm looking for questions. The dandelion roots here have our sticky white stuff that may work. I'm not sure about dandelion roots, but maybe. Summer's short in Wyoming. I've been on the project. I've been on other projects. Thanks for keeping my interest up. So let's go back to the slideshow here. Okay, so the paint. We talked about the slip. Let's talk about the paint. There's organic paint is unique. You can tell it's organic because it's not reliefed. If you look real close at mineral paint, you can see that it's a little raised up. It's sitting on top of the slip. But on this, there's no edge there. It's soaked into the slip, that carbon paint. And sometimes, and I see this on my own pottery, not usually as drastic as this example, but if you paint it with too watery a paint, then you see the lines that are lighter gray? That's watery. That's too watery of paint. And then the blacker, that was thicker paint. So it's easy to make these mistakes. And you'll see it. If you start making this type of pottery, you'll see that a lot, where you've got, where you did the outlining in a different consistency and then the other. So sometimes the outlining is darker and the filling is grayer, or vice versa. Try to keep your consistency the same. So often while you're painting, you have to keep adding water to your paint, mixing it up, trying to make sure it's the right consistency. This is a mistake somebody made 700 years ago. This is a sherd that was found at the Archaeology Southwest Field School a couple years back, and they let me take a picture of it. So it's organic paint. Here it is applied to a bowl. You can see on the left it goes on whatever color the material is. This is yucca fruit paint, so it goes on kind of a golden color. Sometimes, like with Rocky Mountain bee plant, it'll be real dark brown. Mesquite bean is very dark as well. It just depends on the material. But some of this can be very light, so light that it's hard to see it on the pot even. You have to kind of look at it under a certain light. You get it painted on, and then, it's sticky. It's like painting with maple syrup or something, the texture. And then when you fire it, of course, most of that burns off. So the question was, what do they use in Salado country to make that paint? So up in New Mexico, there are Pueblo Native American groups that use organic paint to this day. And they use something called Rocky Mountain bee plant, which is a plant that grows up in that area. And they're on the Colorado Plateau where, like, Pinto Polychrome was developed. I showed you on the map, right? Where my clay slip is coming from. Well, Rocky Mountain bee plant grows there, so they could easily have used that. We don't know. Archaeologists have looked at the black designs on Salado pottery and tried to analyze it to figure out what it is, but all they've been able to identify is that it's carbon. So far they've been unable. Maybe in the future they'll be able to find some chemical tracers or something that'll tell them what they were using. But here in the southern Southwest, in most of that area where Salado Polychrome was manufactured, Rocky Mountain bee plant won't even grow. It's not native. It doesn't grow here. Now, you could plant it in a garden, theoretically, and grow it. So I've been experimenting with trying to figure out what they might have used other than that. These are mesquite beans. These grow all over that area. These are ubiquitous here. And I take mesquite beans, I put them in a big pot on my stove, and I cook them down. Cook them for, fill it with water. Cook them for an hour or two until you've got a strong tea. And then you strain out. You take out all the mesquite beans, you strain out all the solids, and you have a bowl full of like a dark, thick brown liquid. And then I cook that down until it's just a thick, sticky substance. And you can put it in a container and just keep it. And every time you need it, just add a little water to it, paint it on, and then when you're done, let it dry out so it doesn't, don't let it, don't cover it up. Put the lid on it when it's wet, because it'll start to rot, decompose. Another plant I've used is yucca fruit. So the wide leaf yucca produces these fleshy fruits, and I have used those. They work just as well. Here they are chopped up in a pot. Once I, excuse me, get a drink here. Once I've chopped them up and put them in a pot, I just cook them down the same way I do mesquite beans or Rocky Mountain bee plant or anything. Just cook it down, strain out the solids, keep cooking it down until it's thick syrup. Okay, so here's that little tile I was showing you on that big pot earlier. So some archaeologists long ago, I don't know, like mid 20th century, said the order of paint application that the ancients used for Salado Polychrome was white, then black, then red. And then Patricia Crown came along in the 90s, did a study on Salado Polychrome, and she reaffirmed that. She said Salado Polychrome is made by, they apply the white first, then they apply the black, then they apply the red. So the reason they say that is if you look at places like this, where the black and the red come together, the red seems to overlap the black. You can see those black designs come right up to the red, and then the red just cuts it off, right? You can see that several places here where the stripe of red paint seems to come out from under the red. So the red looks like it's applied over it, right? But I disagree. Let me find the right picture. Okay. The black paint, when it's applied, is not, it's not a solid material. It's sticky goo, right? It's material that is going to be burned away in the firing. If I applied red slip over the top of that, you know, it's like I said, it's like syrup. It's sticky. What's going to happen? In the firing, that black's going to burn away, and the red's just going to have nothing to stick to. It doesn't work that way. They're misunderstanding it. Let me show you another example. This is another one. You can see they've painted, now that red is kind of reduced in places and turned sort of a yellowy color, but that's the same material, that red that runs through the middle. So the black seems to, again, come out from under that, that color stripe. So it looks like the red is applied over the black. But again, it's impossible. That's organic paint. You cannot apply it on top of that sticky material. There's nothing for it to stick to. Because after the firing, that's all going away. So what you find, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So what you find is that, well, if I go back, I don't know if I can find that, but you remember that test pookie where I had painted those numbers on the pookie, on the red areas, and it just burned off. There was nothing left. That's what you have here. The black paint is applied over the top of the red, but the secret is, if it's not the right kind of clay, if you haven't got that right smectite clay slip that will absorb that organic paint, it just burns away. So you get the impression that the red is over the black, when in effect, the black is over the red. I did some experiments with this and proved this, and there's a link down in the doobly-doo to a video I did. It's an unlisted video, so even if you've gone through all my videos, you haven't seen this. There's a link to a video down there where I did some experiments to show that the black is actually applied over the red. The red just doesn't accept that organic paint the same way. So if you're interested in more details on that, okay? So let's look at a couple more examples. This is Tonto Polychrome. Remember we talked about the difference? Gila's all white and black, solid areas of white and black. But when red kind of interplays in the design, that's Tonto. And this is another one of the types. This is Dinwiddie Polychrome. So the inside of the bowl is smudged black. That's fired a certain way so that it's all carbon impregnated. And then the outside is painted with those black and white designs. And the bottom is actually red in this. So it's still polychrome, even though it looks like black and white right here. And this is Phoenix Polychrome. So the whole inside is slipped red and not decorated. That's Phoenix Polychrome. And this is classic Gila Polychrome here. You've got a large area of black and white paint. There's still red on the top, around the rim, inside, and then on the bottom there's red as well. Okay, we're going to talk about firing, how this pottery was fired in a minute. I'm going to go back and make sure I've got all the questions in the chat, and then we'll come back here and we'll talk about firing, how Salado Polychrome was fired. Where am I at here? Got to figure out where I left off. Let's see. Yeah, sure, that will work. Headstocks and they're talking about the dandelion. Sorry. The smectite clay, is that the big white pile by the St. John's landfill? I don't know about a pile, but I do go to the St. John's landfill, but I don't get it out of a pile. If you go, if you know the St. John's landfill, if you go up you go through the gate, you go up that dirt road, and then the road goes to the right where they're dumping the trash. But there's a road to the left, just before it turns to the right, where there's maybe some dumpsters or some old garbage trucks, just some equipment just sitting over there. So I park over there and I walk off into the hills, maybe 100 yards or something, and get the white. So it does come from the St. John's landfill, but I don't know about a pile of it. I got 3 hectares of dandelions. Time to get boiling. Yeah, they might work. I know a lot of like mustard plants will work. Like what do they call it? Tansy mustard is one of the plants around here that gets used sometimes. Does Salado mean a 15-minute long firing? Salado needs a 15-minute long firing. It doesn't mean that. It means salty. Ever tried making a slip out of bentonite clay powder sold? Yeah. So bentonite is a type of smectite clay, so it will work. In fact, the clay they use, the Pueblo potters in New Mexico use, is a bentonite clay. So bentonite is the right type. The ones I've purchased online, commercial bentonite that I bought at like Amazon, they tend to fire to kind of a gray color, and they're really hard to apply. They have a weird texture. They're not, they're not very clay-like. When you apply them, they're kind of jelly-like. But you can use them, and they will hold organic paint, in my experience. I just made clay. How long do I have to wait to dry? You made clay? If you made clay, you want to make a pot before you let it dry, right? Now, if you've made a pot, that's not making clay. If you made a pot, then you need to let it dry fully before you fire it. But that's going to depend on where you live and what the relative humidity is. Like, I live in Tucson. I can easily dry a pot out in 2 or 3 days. If I lived in Louisiana, it wouldn't be that way because, obviously, it's a more humid climate. Florida, things don't dry as fast. So that depends on where you live. How do you make a natural glaze? I have no idea. I do not make glazes, so I can't answer that question. Winter poses a problem with drying. Do you have any ideas? Yeah, it's going to dry slower. Dry it in the house, obviously. But you just got to wait till it's dry either way. I mean, if it dries too fast, it can be dangerous. So, like, if you have a wood stove, you can stick it by the wood stove to dry it, but you want it to be pretty dry before you do that, because if you just make it and stick it by the wood stove, it can dry too fast and crack. So just put it away somewhere, put it in a shelf or a little cupboard, and just wait until it's relatively dry. That's what you got to do, and that's going to differ, like I said, depending on the weather. People in Florida, they have to wait a month sometimes for their pots to dry. I don't have that problem in Tucson, but the same with you in winter, right? I make pots all winter, but I live in Tucson. The winters aren't cold and wet, so it's really a good time to make pottery. It depends on where you're at, but you'll get it. People make pottery in the winter. My friend Wes, Airstream Wanderings, it's a YouTube channel. You can look that up, Airstream Wanderings. He lives in Minnesota. He makes pottery all winter, and he's got some great videos on how to fire pottery in the cold as well. So that's something you might be interested in. Ghosty Ocean. No, that's an answer to somebody else. Hold on, it's jumping around on me. Zenolo. Boy, that's a toughie. I can't say that. I left my clay mixed with 20% sand in a bucket outside in my garden. It's a big amount. I'm waiting for the water to evaporate more so I can work with it. I hate that it dries on the surface. Have you tried putting it in a pillowcase? That's a good way to get the water out. If you pour the clay into a pillowcase, then you can hang that pillowcase up, hopefully someplace where it doesn't get rain, like under a porch or something, and that water will seep out the bottom and leave you with clay a lot faster than leaving it in a bucket. Timmy says, if I get black and white underglaze, will I have to cover my pot in earth while it's getting fired to get the black and white color, or do you just have to do that with organic paint? I think you're confused, Timmy. I don't usually cover my organic paint at all. I do that with reduced iron. So if you get black and white underglaze, they're just going to fire black and white. You just have to fire it. You don't have to worry about smothering it. What are some options for organic binder? I haven't found tree sap in my area. No tree sap? I mean, do you have trees? Pine trees are good because they make a lot of sap. Other than that, like I said about the organic paint, remember I was boiling down mesquite beans, I was boiling down yucca fruit. You can boil down anything. If you find a plant that produces fruit, those are good because they're sugary. They're going to make a sticky substance. Put them in a pot, boil them down, strain all the solids out, boil it down, and then you can use that as a organic binder. Do you sell gourds? I would kill for one. Okay, so Zenalol, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, wants to know if I sell gourds. I don't sell gourds. If you're interested in the actual gourd, the whole gourd, there's a place called, why can't I say it now? There's a gourd farm in Coolidge, Arizona. It's a funny name, Wertz, W-E-R-T-Z, Wertz Gourd Farm. And they have a website, and you can order from them. They'll ship gourds. If you want a gourd scraper, like the tools I used to make pottery with, I will have those this week, probably Tuesday. And so they will be available on my website. And again, the website address is ancientpottery.how. So the gourd scrapers will be available midweek this week on my website. Let me take the time to remind you that if you give this video a like, that helps me with the algorithm. So I'd appreciate that very much. And if you're not, this would also be a good time to subscribe to my channel because I have a lot of good information, a lot of good content coming out, such as how to use pottery to water your garden. That'll be out this week. So I'll keep looking for that. And if you subscribe, you'll know when that comes out. Okay, I think I'm pretty much caught up. Let me see. Maybe not. There's a lot of questions here. Hold on. Where was that last one I did? Does the water cooling jar still work with the white slip or the black organic paint? Sure. The water cooling jar would work even with paint on it. Organic binder, could you buy a rosin chunk from a music store? That's a good question. I've never tried it. I have no idea. Maybe. There are a few good clay sites near. Oh, that's not for me. Would regular table sugar or honey work as a paint binder? Yeah, possibly. Some of the Pueblo potters in New Mexico have been known to use Caro syrup. So I assume anything sugary would probably work like that. I saw pottery style of Azamgath, India. They make it shiny blue pottery. I don't know nothing about Indian pottery, but it sounds fascinating. Go back to the slideshow. Okay, let's talk about how they fired Salado pottery. So in all these pictures I've showed you, they don't really show the bottoms of the pots. So it's easy to assume that the bottoms are clean like the rest. But if you start looking at the bottoms of Salado pottery, you'll notice that they all have these fire clouds on them where pieces of wood literally were sitting on top of that pot while it was being fired. And that tells you something about the way it was fired. So if we go to like the pottery from Casas Grandes, Chihuahua, or we look at White Mountain Redwares, right? Other types in the Southwest, we will see that there are never any fire clouds on them. So they had to have been fired with cover sherds, bits of pottery that protect the pottery from the fuel. But the opposite is true with Salado Polychrome. Almost every pot has fire clouds on the bottom. And that tells us that they were fired without cover sherds. So that's one clue. Archaeologists have found, as far as I know to date, no evidence of how Salado pottery was fired. It's a lot of cultures in the Southwest are like that. Mimbres is probably the most studied culture in the Southwest. They have studied them 3 ways from Sunday, and archaeologists I know have actually gone out in the field and walked around near villages that they know were producing pottery, and been able to find no evidence for firing at all. No kilns, no firing pits, nothing. And it's the same way with Salado. Now, Salado has been less studied than Mimbres. All I'm saying is cultures that are even more studied haven't found any evidence of firing. Salados are less studied, but again, we have that same pattern of nobody knows how they fired because we have no evidence. So we can guess, we can figure out something that works, but even then we might be wrong because there's no evidence. But this is a clue. These fire clouds are a definite clue on how they were firing their pottery. So what I found over time, trying to fire these without cover sherds in an open fire on the surface, so the assumptions I'm making are no cover sherds, no bits of pottery protecting the pot. The pot is set there and the fuel is put on top of it. The other one is that they weren't using a pit, because if we're not finding pits, then they must not be using pits. But that's kind of a stretch, because I think with the case of Mimbres, we'd have to say they're almost certainly using pits because those pots are smothered, and yet we found no pits. But in this case, they probably weren't, because they're not smothered. They're on the surface. They're oxidized. That's why the reds are so red. So the way I've found is wood, stack the wood around the pottery, but don't use too much. Use enough that it's going to get up to, like I said, aim for like 750, right? And no more than, say, 15 minutes. You want a nice, robust fire. You want it to burn quick. You want it to burn hot. So I build a bed of coals. I build what do they call it, a primary fire on the surface. Build up that bed of coals while I heat the pots up. I place the pots on rocks over those coals, stack the wood around it, and not a lot. Like I said, this is very little. If you saw my latest video where I was firing those Choco cylinder jars, that used a lot more wood than this. This is not enough, so little wood that I can look through almost anywhere and see the pot. The pot isn't obscured because there's just one layer of wood basically. And then I let it burn. And then I watch the pot during the firing. And when I can see that the whites have burned clean, if the fire is still burning, when those whites have burned clean, I start removing the fuel. I just take the shovel or a stick and I knock the wood away that's burning, because you don't want to overfire. Like somebody here said, I've tried making it and I always burn the blacks turn out gray. That you've over oxidized it. So when the whites are white, then you have to break the fire up to keep from starting to burn out your organic paint, because that oxidation, happens pretty fast, oxidizing the carbon out of those pots. So here's an example of a bowl that is underfired. So we have two things that happen when we're trying to fire these. Overfiring, over-oxidizing, that is burning out, starting to burn away the paint, right? And you'll see that if you make some, but you also see it at museums. You'll see it in sherds where the ancient potters had the same problem. They overfired it and they burned out some of the paint. So the designs come out kind of gray instead of black. And then there's underfiring, under-oxidizing. That is what this is, right? They didn't get enough of that carbon burned off of the pot before the firing was either burned out or they broke it up, whatever happened. And that's why the inside, instead of being white, is gray. Doesn't look as good. That's under-oxidized. And those are the two problems, not only that I have trying to do that, but that you see in the prehistoric record as well. So they were having a lot of the same problems we were. Here's a nice little Gila Polychrome jar. That's at the collection in Cochise College. And there's a nice Tonto Polychrome jar. This is the type we're going to be making in the Ancient Potters Club this month. Tonto Polychrome. This is at Eastern Arizona College. And there's a nice little Gila Polychrome jar. This one is at the museum in El Paso, the El Paso Museum of Archaeology, I think it's called. This is Cliff Polychrome, one of the later Salado types. Now, what happened to the Salado, right? So, if you saw, I did a recent video about like what happened in 1450. 1450, the vast area of the Southwest was depopulated. Huge area. So check out that video if you don't understand that. But the Salado area was like right dead center for that area that was depopulated. All the Salado people split. They left. They all up and moved, or they all died or something. And so we don't know. We don't know where they went, because a lot of times when people leave, we can track them by their pottery, right? So like if somebody lived over here and then they move over here and we suddenly start seeing that type of pottery made here, we can think, well, those people must have moved there because they're still making the same pottery. But in this case, for the most part, wherever the Salado went, they didn't keep making Salado Polychrome. So we're left guessing where they went, what happened to them. Now, this is from a book about Zuni pottery. So years ago, way back like early 20th century, some archaeologists excavated a pueblo, a historic Zuni pueblo. What is that called? Hawiku. It's called Hawiku, and it's on the Zuni reservation. And Hawiku dates back to like maybe 1450, 1500, around the time that Salado was going away. And when they excavated the Hawiku, they actually found Salado Polychrome pottery. These are 3 examples of Salado pottery that came from a Zuni pueblo, from Hawiku. So in the book, they said, well, we don't know if these are heirlooms, right? So this is grandma's pottery. Grandma used to live to the south. She brought it with her, right? It could be heirlooms, or if they were actually made at Hawiku. So far as I know, nobody's ever done any tests on these. That is doable. They could drill a little hole, take some material, and figure out if this was made at Hawiku or somewhere else. Now, that would be interesting. But It is a little clue to what might have happened to the Salado. They may have moved, or at least some of them may have moved up in with the Zunis, because we do have Salado pottery found at a Zuni Pueblo. Let me go back to the questions here, make sure I'm all caught up here. Where was I? Yeah, Ren Pixie, if you're going to go up to the St. John's dump, send me an email and I will send you a point on a map with a pin on it. That'll help you find it. Have you used dry lake bed clay like out of Pahrump? Yeah, I have used dry lake bed clay, and generally it's pretty salty. You got to wash the salt out of it. Tony Soares uses lake bed clay pretty regularly. Does the water cooling jar... Oh, I read that. That's weird. How'd that happen? For organic binder, could you buy raw... Wow, I'm reading stuff that I've already read. Weird. Okay. Can you try this in your upcoming video? Shiny black pottery. Yeah, I'm not interested in making shiny black pottery, because some of the pueblos in New Mexico still do that. So there are some good videos. If you go... I'll tell you what, I'll put a link in the doobly-doo. I can't do it while I'm on, but after the live stream's over, I'll put a link in the doobly-doo to a Maria Martinez video about how she makes, how they at San Ildefonso Pueblo make their shiny blackware. Thank you. I used some from my backyard and it worked, but I used ocean sand. Ash Meadow, huh? Okay, I'm trying to find a question. I appreciate it. One more thing. My Pahrump clay, when it was drying, got a fuzzy white mold or something over it. Just kept wiping it off. Yeah, it's salt. It's salt. That's because that lake bed clay is salty. So what you do is you put the clay, if you've got salty clay, you put it in a bucket, you put water on it, you let it set for a day, and you pour that water off, you put more water on it, you let it set for a day. You do that a few times, you rinse the salt out. Tony Soares, look him up. He's got a YouTube channel, Tony Soares Pottery. He has a video about washing the salt out of clay that would probably be helpful for you. What was the first painted pottery made in the Americas? No idea. How do you wash the salt out of it? I already answered that. Yeah, but I don't know, because I only know about the Southwest. I do not know about other parts of the, over on the Southeast, in the southeastern United States, they had pottery centuries before they had pottery here in the Southwest. And even here in the Southwest, I couldn't tell you who was the first to have decorated ware. Some of the first pottery was found right here in Tucson. Dates from, around, I don't know, like 200 AD, something like that. Some of the first pottery in the Southwest, not in the United States. Okay, I'll go back to my scene that I'm caught up on the slideshow. Oh, real quick, if you give me a like, that'll help me with the algorithm. And you can subscribe to my channel. You'll catch up on, when future videos come out. I should have one this Wednesday about using pottery in your garden. I'm looking for my... Oh, here we go. All right. I just got a few more to show you. That'll be it. I'll wrap this up real quick. Tonto Polychrome. This one is from Mesa Grande Museum in Mesa, Arizona. That's another Gila Polychrome jar. This is also from Mesa Grande. That's a Tonto Polychrome jar from Eastern Arizona College. If you live in Arizona or New Mexico and you're interested in, ancient pottery, you should make a little field trip to Eastern Arizona College. It doesn't get a lot of visitors, but they've got an excellent pottery collection you should check out. This Gila Polychrome jar from Cochise College. That's Tonto Polychrome. That's from Beshbagawa. And I have one more pot. That's a little, that's Pinto Polychrome bowl, and that is from Arizona Museum of Natural History in Mesa. So that's it. We covered all the information. I appreciate all your questions. Don't forget, I'll go over my notes again, that the Southwest Kiln Conference is September 27th to the 29th in Cortez, Colorado. The address for that is swkiln.com for more information. But try to join us there if you're interested. Pottery Firing in Tucson, August 3rd. That's next Saturday, a week from yesterday at 8 a.m. If you're interested in joining us, you can bring a pot. I will fire it for you. But you got to get a hold of me. And to get a hold of me, you have to go to my website, ancientpottery.how. And there's a contact at the bottom. You'll see a link, contact us. But I think it's ancientpottery.how/contact. contact. I'm not sure. If you use the contact form on the website, you can get a hold of me, send me an email, and I can tell you the address and details. I will have gourd scrapers available on my website this week. They've been out of stock for a couple months, so I know there's a lot of people that have been looking for gourd scrapers. I will have pookies available probably within the month. Okay? And the Ancient Potters Club project, which will start August 1st of August, will be Tonto Polychrome jar. So a lot of the pots we looked at today were Tonto Polychrome. We're going to be making some of those in our Zoom class on Wednesday nights. Any more questions? Sorry if I'm saying this again, but can I post my ancient pottery Chaco Canyon cup pictures on YouTube? No, you cannot post photos on YouTube comments. So if you have a Chaco cylinder and you want to post a picture, post it on Instagram. Use the hashtag Ancient Pottery Challenge, and I will see them all and share them on my channel. So I will share them on a video if you post it on Instagram with the hashtag Ancient Pottery Challenge. If you just want to share it with me, you can also message me on Instagram or Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Primitive Pottery. So if you go to Facebook, look up Primitive Pottery YouTube group, you can post it in there and share it with a lot of people. There's a lot of people in there. I don't know, 20, 30,000 members, that can comment and like it and whatnot. Okay, I think that does it for the day. I appreciate everybody stopping by. We'll see you next month.